The maid incessantly murmured the same phrase in her dreams for 3 consecutive nights. It seems that one of the hens in the backyard is missing. I merely attributed her daytime concerns to her hard work and paid little heed. It was not until our journey to the capital was interrupted by a catastrophic landslide, resulting in the maid's untimely demise, that I was rescued by the timely arrival of the soldiers. Overwhelmed with fear and uncertainty, I sought out the commander of the troops to reveal my true identity as the daughter of the admiral. He cast a glance at the maid's attire I was wearing and suddenly inquired, "Are the hens still nesting recently?" 1. I stood dazed in the torrential rain, perplexed by his inexplicable question. At that moment, mud and rainwater cascaded down, obscuring my vision, and I instinctively wiped my eyes with my still trembling hand. The commanding officer, perched high upon his steed, suddenly darkened his gaze, his iron-clad hand slowly resting upon the hilt of his sword. Perhaps, at the pivotal junctures of fate, the mind involuntarily retraces seemingly inconsequential, yet cryptic details. A sudden realization struck me. As I had approached through the rain, his first glance had landed upon my collar. What lay there? A white gardenia embroidered delicately upon it, not my handiwork, but that of my devoted maid, Baiji. Half an hour prior, she, along with my bodyguards, carriage, and belongings, had been violently swept down the cliff by a torrential mudslide. I had been thrown from the carriage and lost consciousness in the muddy roadside until the city guards arrived to awaken me. The officer before me, expressionless, fixed his gaze upon my roughened palm, slowly tightening his grip on the sword as hilt. My heart raced like a drum, my mind whirling. My memories flashed back to 2 days prior, just before my departure. My father, mother, and 2 stepmothers stood at the gate, their eyes swollen with tears as they bid me farewell. Suddenly, my 3rd stepmother, hailing from a family of bandits, urged me to remove my hairpins and don the garments of my maid, Baiji. The world is unstable, with chaos lurking everywhere. In case of any mishap, Lanzheng, disguised in maidess attire, will attract less attention. Thus, I now wore Baiji's clothing. She had a habit of embroidering a white gardenia on every garment as collar, a tradition she had cherished since childhood. I remained silent as the long blade slid inch by inch from its scabbard, raindrops striking the blade and instantly being cleaved asunder. The officer's gaze was sharper than the sword itself. My blood felt like ice, my throat constricted. The cacophony of voices and rain seemed to fade into the distance. An odd thought suddenly surfaced. Before our journey to the capital, Baiji, usually obedient and reticent, had muttered the same phrase in her sleep for several consecutive nights. It seems like one of the chickens in the backyard is missing. At the time, I had dismissed her words, attributing them to her overthinking. For this trip to the capital, my mother had originally arranged for Granny Shen, who had once lived in the palace, to accompany me, but a few days before our departure, she had fractured her leg, and Baiji took her place. Throughout the journey, Baiji's demeanor had grown solemn, as if she had become a different person, often lost in thought, oblivious to my calls. When our eyes met, her gaze was laden with complexity. I assumed she, like me, was anxious about entering the palace.
Clang.
The blade was fully unsheathed. The officer looked down at me, as if observing a corpse. The torrential rain poured, and lightning cracked the sky like a silver dragon. In a moment of brightness, I suddenly blurted out, "It seems like one of the chickens in the backyard is missing." 2. I found myself seated in the carriage entering the city. The officer, with his back to me, spoke in a monotone, devoid of inflection. "Once we reach the city, I will procure a complete set of possessions for you, Mississippi. From this moment forth, you shall be known as the daughter of the General, Xie Lanzheng. I hope this year of concealment allows you to enter the palace without revealing your true identity." Ironically, I was hesitating whether to eliminate that young lady, but this landslide has conveniently resolved that dilemma. Outside, the thunder roared incessantly. I clenched my jaw, suppressing any tremor in my voice. Who could have foreseen such a drastic change in fate? Just 2 days prior, I had been the most cherished and refined daughter of the border general's house, sheltered within the confines of my home, indulging in the arts and studies. My garments fragrant and perfectly pressed, my life a cycle of leisure and grace. Yet now, I stood alone, a survivor of calamity, my body caked in mud, my appearance disheveled, with myriad small wounds, both cold and painful, perilously close to losing my life. As the carriage traversed through the downpour, amid the officers' intermittent conversation, I grasped the gravity of my situation. All of this turmoil stemmed from my impending entrance into the palace. In this chaotic world, with rebels emerging, the court mandated that all local officials of second rank or higher were to select one adult child to enter the capital for 3 years, sons to serve as companions to the crown prince, daughters to serve the empress dowager. What was presented as a favor was, in fact, a means of control. The other officials had chosen the least favored children from their families. My father, having married my mother, 2 stepmothers, and only bearing me, had no other heirs. While I was raised with care, I was not spoiled. Aware of the gravity of the imperial decree, I understood that defiance could endanger my entire family. After shedding a few tears, I dutifully set out for the capital. Baiji had entered our household a year prior. She was of similar age and bore a striking resemblance to me. Upon seeing her for the first time, my mother had remarked that from a distance, one could hardly distinguish us. Baiji, usually docile and quiet, quickly earned her position as my personal maid due to her diligent service. In recent years, due to the insurgents, the capital had instituted strict scrutiny over all who entered, with investigations extending back generations. Thus, unbeknownst to me, a web of conspiracy had been silently woven around me, all for the purpose of usurping my identity and entering the palace today. The officer before me was one of the rebels.
So too was Baiji.
I could not fathom their intentions for impersonating me within the palace, but it surely constituted a grave crime punishable by death, potentially implicating my entire family. The thought sent a shiver down my spine. Had it not been for this sudden landslide, I would likely be a corpse by now, and my father, along with my 3 mothers and over 100 people in the general's household, would face utter annihilation. Tears streamed uncontrollably down my face. A whirlwind of fear, panic, helplessness, and anxiety enveloped me, wishing fervently that this ordeal was merely a dream from which I would awaken, still nestled in my soft, fragrant bed, surrounded by my chattering maids. My second and third stepmothers, one cheerful, the other cold, calling me to pay respects to my mother. I shut my eyes, striving to regain my composure. The rain drummed against the carriage roof like a martial drumbeat before a battle. I clenched my trembling fists, silently reassured myself. The situation had not yet reached its nadir. Heaven had granted me a sliver of hope. Xiao Lanzheng must remain steadfast. 3. In the following days, I resided alone in a tranquil courtyard within the city. The officer had arranged for 2 matrons to instruct me on the etiquette and demeanor expected of a young lady of the general's family, while another teacher imparted the theoretical knowledge behind the 4 arts: chess, music, calligraphy, and painting. As the daughter of the general, even if you do not master these arts, you must at least be familiar with them. Remember, you must never offer your skills voluntarily. To perform without showing any signs of trepidation is your success. I practiced caution in my words and actions, learning while concealing my true abilities. The relentless rain finally ceased on the 5th day. On the 6th, I donned exquisite attire befitting a young lady, adorned with hairpins and accompanied by a new maid and guards as I embarked once more towards the capital. The difference this time was that I would assume Baiji's identity, masquerading as myself. The officer accompanied me into the city. Along the way, we encountered a few instances of chaos among the refugees, begging for food. Contrary to my expectations, the officer did not respond harshly. Instead, he instructed the convoy to steer clear and even scattered some small coins. I found this surprising, reminding me of my father. Whenever he traveled to handle affairs in Bien City, he would ask my mother to prepare some small coins. When I inquired about it, he remained silent, his brow furrowed. My third stepmother explained that the outside world was fraught with difficulties, and only the citizens of Bien City, due to my father's governance, lived relatively peaceful lives. My father, once born into a family of merit for 3 generations, had renounced his title and the splendor of the capital 10 years prior, weary of court intrigues, leading our family to this remote Bien City, where he served as a local official. This journey to the capital, he had repeatedly cautioned me. Your aunt is the one who once held the Empress Dowager Yuanguifei in her arms. I have already arranged everything with silver for you. Lanzheng has endured these 3 years, and when the time comes, your father will personally go to the capital to bring you home. As these thoughts crossed my mind, my eyes instantly brimmed with tears. However, I quickly wiped them away, for the general stood guard outside my carriage. After a journey that lasted half a month, we arrived the day before entering the capital. The general ordered his subordinates to disperse, his expression grave as he conveyed the task to me. Once you enter the palace, you must accomplish two things. First, I will inform you of the code to connect with the informant within the palace and deliver a letter to him. Secondly, you must assist him under the guise of Xiaolancheng, protect him, and heed his commands. I feigned calmness and asked, "Who is the informant?" The general remained silent for a moment. "Unknown." I was slightly taken aback, but said nothing. In such circumstances, speaking less is always prudent. As expected, the general let out a faint sigh and continued, "In recent years, the Mo army has secretly placed over 80 informants in the palace. However, the emperor is ruthless. He would rather wrongly execute 100 than let one escape. Thus, all these informants have met a tragic end, and now only one remains. Though there is only one left, he is the best. To protect him, aside from the supreme commander of the Mo army and his most loyal soldiers, no one knows his true identity." My heart tightened. This was the first time he had openly admitted to being part of the Mo army, which is precisely the faction currently wanted by the court. The government has issued a bounty. Any citizen of Yan dynasty, regardless of status, who kills a member of the Mo army can claim 50 taels of silver. In the common populace, the Mo army is referred to as the Mo Wushi. He has but one codename. What is that codename?
Han E.
I prepared to report Han E to the Empress Dowager. I had come to a decision during these days. I must enter the palace. Otherwise, I would be guilty of treason. However, the admiral's residence must not be implicated because of me. As a frail young woman with no trustworthy companions, my only course of action is to find a powerful figure to disclose the whole truth. The Empress Dowager is the best choice. Firstly, my first duty upon entering the palace is to pay my respects to her. Secondly, the Empress Dowager is renowned for her compassion throughout the land. She has devoted her life to Buddhism, practices vegetarianism, weaves cloth, and makes cakes to distribute to the orphans and lonely children of the city. Every month, she holds a release ceremony in the royal gardens. The current emperor is known for his harsh governance and strict control. It is said that many times, it was the Empress Dowager's compassion that saved erring palace maids and ministers from the emperor's wrath. If the Empress Dowager harbors any doubts about me, I shall declare my intent to die. My mere life is inconsequential. I cannot allow the admiral's residence and the citizens of Bianqing to suffer unwarranted misfortune because of me. I encountered the Empress Dowager in the imperial garden. She was sewing winter clothes for the soldiers alongside the palace maids, her demeanor kind and jovial, creating a warm and harmonious atmosphere. Accompanying us was another young woman, the daughter of the Wu Taifu, who had come to the capital on imperial orders. "Rise, children. You are all pitiable, having to leave your homes at such a young age to come to this palace. I am sure you are filled with anxiety and trepidation." The Empress Dowager's words were gentle, like those of a mother. Upon hearing them, my eyes grew warm. I felt that the panic, fear, and grievances of these past days finally had a refuge and an outlet. As Xian rose, a gray tabby cat suddenly sprang out from somewhere and leaped at our feet. The young lady beside me gasped. The Empress Dowager laughed. "Do not be afraid. This little wild cat is one I found in the palace, still untrained. Perhaps it wishes to befriend you two charming young ladies." The Empress Dowager's affability and kindness prompted a shared smile between me and the young lady, relief evident on our faces. On our way back to the Empress Dowager's palace, we followed at the rear of the procession, my anxious heart beginning to settle as I prepared to disclose the truth when there were fewer people around. As we passed a magnificent hall, I noticed a young man standing quietly before the closed palace gates. He was dressed in official attire, his brows slightly furrowed as he gazed intently at the doors. Despite this, his demeanor could not conceal the elegance and ethereal quality that surrounded him. The young lady beside me gently tugged at my sleeve. "Do you know who that official is?" I shook my head. She leaned closer and whispered, "Qing Jian." My eyes widened in surprise. The poet Qing Jian? Qing Jian was a young poet whose fame had risen dramatically in recent years. He possessed extraordinary talent and a deep compassion for the world. I often kept a volume of his poetry by my pillow, which led my second mother to tease me, saying, "Longing for the person through the poetry." Even my father praised him as a rare and knowledgeable young talent. I stared at Qing Jian, having imagined his appearance countless times, yet never expected to meet him under such circumstances. He was even more graceful than I had envisioned. Suddenly, the palace gates swung open, and several eunuchs surrounded a man in red, who emerged slowly. The eunuchs all smiled obsequiously, bending so low that they nearly touched their knees to the ground. I thought it was the emperor, but it was evidently not, as the man spoke to Qing Jian with a smile. "Lord Qing, please return. The emperor is too busy to see you." Qing Jian gazed at him coldly. "Is it the emperor who refuses to see me? Or is it Lord Su, who has persuaded the emperor not to? Does it make a difference?" The man replied, still smiling. Qing Jian fell silent for a moment and said softly, "Everything in this world has its destined course. I am curious to see how long Lord Su can maintain his pride." With that, he turned and left calmly. "That man is the smiling Prime Minister, Su Wang." The young lady leaned in again. "He oversees the imperial prison, and it is said that he is cruel and treacherous. Those from the MO army, or ministers who find themselves in his hands, unable to live or die. He is the #1 figure threatening the MO army from the outside." I turned to the young lady, curious. "How do you know all this?" She blinked, a hint of pride in her eyes. "Before I came, my father made me memorize a month's worth of palace affairs so that I could avoid trouble. Over there." Su Wang turned, revealing a pale, scholarly face. He saw the Empress Dowager approaching with her phoenix carriage and respectfully bowed. The Empress Dowager's voice was displeased. "Qing Jian is a talented individual, well regarded among scholars. If anything were to happen to him, the literati would surely rise in protest, and that would not bode well for the stability of the court. Lord Su should be more accommodating." This statement carried a hint of reproach. The Empress Dowager's admonition was something that would instill fear in the ministers. Yet, Su Wang remained unfazed, his attitude respectful, and smiling as he responded, "I shall bear that in mind." Upon arriving at the sleeping palace, the Empress Dowager expressed her fatigue. The old palace maid dismissed everyone, allowing me and the young lady to withdraw first. My heart began to race. With no idle people around, this was the perfect opportunity to report my findings. I bit my lip, steeling my resolve, and immediately knelt on the ground, trembling as I spoke. "Your Majesty, I have something to report." "Oh, right." The Empress Dowager suddenly recalled something and lazily interrupted me. She then lightly raised her finger and pointed at me. "Dig it out." Both the young lady and I froze, bewildered by the Empress Dowager's cryptic command. Two palace maids swiftly seized the young lady by the neck and dragged her out. Before I could comprehend the situation, I heard the sound of anguished screams from outside. Moments later, the young lady was dragged back in. Upon seeing her condition, I began to tremble uncontrollably. She lay on the ground, her eyes reduced to two bloodied voids, her mouth agape, emitting hollow cries of awe, awe, awe. The Empress Dowager spoke coolly. "A mere wild cat has caused you to lose your composure. How audacious to impersonate someone under my very nose." Wu Taifu was always honest while in the palace. I did not expect that after just a few years outside, you would dare to commit such an act of treachery and replace her with a counterfeit. "Convey my decree. Wu Taifu has committed the crime of deceiving the sovereign. His entire family shall be executed, without exception." The elderly courtier beside me, evidently of considerable standing, pondered aloud. "The Taifu once instructed His Majesty on this matter. Perhaps it would be prudent to dispatch the Daziyuan to verify the facts lest any errors tarnish your esteemed reputation." The Empress Dowager stifled a yawn, covering her mouth delicately. "If it is a mistake, then let it be so." Upon saying this, her gaze fell upon me, prostrate on the ground, as she languidly inquired, "What was it you wished to report?" I swallowed the bitter taste of blood in my mouth and slowly replied, "I humbly ask for the Empress Dowager's permission to see my aunt, Consort Yen." The Dowager narrowed her phoenix eyes slightly. "Consort Yen has been serving the Emperor lately. She is likely quite fatigued. Best to wait a while." I respectfully acknowledged her words. "Yes, Your Majesty." The palace at night was eerily silent. I lay on my bed, cocooned in my blankets, trembling incessantly. For half an hour, I had been shaking. In the span of a mere month, the world had suddenly revealed to me a terrifying new visage, danger, horror, and bloodshed. It felt as though I were walking along the precipice of a cliff, ensnared in an unending nightmare. Unable to contain myself, I began to weep softly. Father, mother, second sister, third sister, I sobbed, I am so frightened. What should I do? All night, I helplessly wept as I gazed at the ceiling, until dawn broke and I finally fell into a fitful sleep. In my dreams, I seemed to return to the governor's residence, clapping joyfully as I watched the townsfolk present my father with a plaque inscribed benefactor of the people. Father is a good official in the hearts of the common folk. He is a hero in my heart, I exclaimed. Yet my father's expression darkened.
No.
I am no hero. The glory of 3 generations rests upon me, and I dare not defy the will of heaven. I cannot save the people. I only wish to protect this family and the citizens of this city. Curiously, I asked, if you are not a hero, then who can be? My father did not respond. His gaze lingered on the azure sky outside for a long while before he said, I too hope for such a person. The scene shifted. I sat idly in my boudoir, holding a collection of poetry and reading aloud. War burns away the spring sowing, longing for the autumn wind to thin the cold clad. Suddenly, I opened my eyes, murmuring, the cold clad. Third sister, who was usually as frigid as ice, had once praised me in her drunken state. Though Lan Zheng's nature is gentle and weak, she possesses an inner resilience. The softest water can wear away the hardest stone. Her tenacity does not lie in ostentation but can emerge as a formidable force when needed. As the first rays of sunlight streamed through the window, I made up my mind. I could not give up. In the past, father, mother, second sister, and third sister each protected me. Now it was my turn to protect them. In the days that followed, I navigated the inner palace with extreme caution, serving the Empress Dowager with utmost discretion. She appeared quite pleased with me, often summoning me to her side for conversation, discussing everything from the 4 books and 5 classics to music, chess, calligraphy, painting, and jewelry. I often broke into a cold sweat, realizing that had Baiji replaced me here, the governor's residence might have already met the same fate as the Wu family. It dawned on me why the general had said, Han Yi will seek you out at the appropriate time. Surely, Han Yi was observing whether I could first pass muster with the Empress Dowager. Privately, I often heard the noble ladies who had entered the palace before me speak incessantly of the esteemed Qing Jian. Even in such dire circumstances, the girls' hearts could not conceal their admiration for his appearance, his talents, and his concerns for the world. I listened in silence, refraining from speaking much. In the past, I had enjoyed discussing him with second sister at the governor's residence, but now I knew I must not utter a single word. The Empress Dowager would regularly host a lantern festival within the palace, assuming the role of the matchmaker, believing it a noble deed to unite young talents with noble ladies, fostering harmony between the ruler and his subjects while accumulating merit. This festival was held as scheduled, with the spotlight on 2 individuals, Qing Jian and Su Wang. Qing Jian had gained a stellar reputation for his recent treatise, widely praised among the populace, while Su Wang had become notorious for his brutal treatment of prisoners captured from the Ink army. When the 2 made their entrance, the atmosphere of the banquet shifted dramatically. Qing Jian, dressed in simple attire, was slender yet upright, exuding an elegant and serene demeanor, causing the noble ladies to eagerly anticipate catching a glimpse of him. In contrast, Su Wang strode clad in resplendent crimson, instantly casting a somber and oppressive silence over the gathering. He moved with an air of nonchalance, as if relishing the fear and trepidation he inspired in all around him. My gaze remained fixed on Qing Jian. Everyone was watching him, and thus I felt emboldened to do the same, until the brilliant fireworks erupted in the sky, drawing everyone to the railing in awe. I took a deep breath and slowly approached the corner where Qing Jian stood. Yes, I believed, Han Yi is indeed Qing Jian. He is astute, skillfully maintaining a balance between giving voice to the people and safeguarding himself with the support of literati. His line from years past, "Autumn winds thin the cold clad," though not widely recognized, had always been one of my favorites. During these days, I noticed the complex attitudes of those around me towards the Ink army. Although they were deemed rebels, there seemed to be no outright hatred. Yet I did not dwell on such thoughts. As an ordinary and fragile woman, I had no intention of becoming entangled in this grand affair. I simply wished to save my family and myself. I devised a plan. First, I would approach Qing Ji and under the guise of Baiji, delivering the letter assigned by the general to him to fulfill the primary task. Subsequently, I would orchestrate an accident, feigning amnesia, pretending to forget my identity as Bai Ji, and convincing myself that I was truly Xiaolonzheng. In this way, I would no longer need to navigate the complexities of the Ink Army and could return to my true self. As the most dazzling firework blossomed in the sky, I reached Qingjian. I gracefully inclined my body, uttering the secret phrase, "It seems I have lost my handkerchief nearby, embroidered with a white plum blossom. I wonder if the esteemed sir has seen it." Qingjian regarded me with his dark, glistening eyes, yet remained silent. I assumed the explosion of fireworks had drowned out my words and was about to repeat myself when a languid voice sounded from behind me. "Is this the handkerchief? I found it by Taiyi Lake. The embroidery of this white plum is exquisite." I froze, slowly turning to face the speaker, my entire being going rigid. Beneath the resplendent fireworks that exploded in the night sky, Su Wang tilted his head slightly, his eyelids half closed, scrutinizing me. His crimson attire blended with the flickering shadows of the night, rendering his pale scholar's face even more ghostly, sending a chill through me. A profound sense of unreality washed over me. It felt as if the fireworks were mere illusions, as if the person before me was not real. And even I was a mere figment. I stood there, immobilized, until Qingjian's cool voice broke through my stupor.
Indeed.
Lord Su has spent too long in the imperial prison. His mere presence instills fear, without a word. Su Wang chuckled, his tone relaxed and casual. Naturally, I cannot compare to a gentleman like Lord Qing, who is favored by the ladies for his refined demeanor. In that regard, I must humbly concede. He then nonchalantly held the handkerchief to his nose, casting a casual glance my way. "This handkerchief is quite fragrant. Had it not belonged to the young lady, I might have kept it for myself." His words dripped with mockery, yet his gaze remained cold and silent, resembling a tranquil, deep pool. I suddenly regained my composure, pressed my lips together, and performed a respectful bow. "I am Xiaolonzheng. This is indeed my handkerchief. I must have lost it while wandering near Taiyi Lake."
"Thank you, Lord Su."
I lowered my gaze, extending my hands to receive it. The handkerchief slipped into my grasp, my pale fingers briefly brushing against it, feeling even whiter than the plum blossom embroidered upon it. "Since it is yours, I shall not deprive you of it. However, Miss Xie should be more careful in the future. Should you lose it again, I may not be able to assist you." Su Wang smiled lightly as he began to depart, flanked by a throng of guards, parting the crowd as he walked. My heart raced wildly as I clutched the handkerchief. After a considerable moment, I gradually regained my composure and turned to find Qingjian intently gazing at me, his eyes harboring a hint of curiosity. My heart quivered as I pondered how to explain myself. Suddenly, he inquired, "Miss Xie, have you been crying?" I wiped the corner of my eye, and indeed, it felt chillingly damp. It dawned on me that, in my earlier shock and anxiety, tears had unknowingly escaped my eyes. The fireworks dazzled my sight. "Thank you for your concern, Lord Qing," I offered a feeble explanation. Qingjian nodded, his gaze softening. "It seems the fireworks have indeed startled you, Miss Xie. Fear not. If you do not mind, I shall escort you back to the palace." I recognized his kind intentions, believing I had cried due to Su Wang's intimidation, and he was merely offering words of comfort. However, in my current state of utter confusion, I managed a strained smile and declined, "No need." A flicker of surprise crossed his face, as if he had not anticipated my rejection so readily. After all, this was something that many noble ladies yearned for. That night, I lay in bed, staring blankly at the ceiling. The realization that Su Wang was indeed Han Yi struck me like a heavy hammer, shattering the understanding I had held for over a decade into mere fragments. Perhaps because I had long prepared myself for the possibility of death. The most potent emotion swelling within me at that moment was not fear, but rather an indescribable sense of emptiness. I was at a loss for the source of this void, feeling as though the sage words and principles I had revered in my studies had become mere illusions, hollow and insubstantial. How could Su Wang be Han Yi? As time passed within the palace, I became increasingly reticent and obedient, adhering strictly to the rules, fearful of any lapse in diligence. Now that I had successfully made contact, I was certain Su Wang would seek me out again. He, being a man of power, would undoubtedly have reasonable and legitimate methods. All I needed to do was wait patiently. One day, while serving tea to the Empress Dowager, she suddenly asked, on the night of the Lantern Festival, "Su Wang picked up your handkerchief?" I replied, "Yes." She continued, "Why did you inquire about Qingjian?" I answered, "During my studies in the boudoir, I held great admiration for Lord Qing's poetry, so I thought it would be nice to exchange a few words with him." The Empress Dowager took a sip of tea and suddenly laughed. "You speak quite honestly. It seems that the fates between men and women are indeed inescapable. Your handkerchief was fortuitously found by Su Wang."
Kneel, then.
Without hesitation, I sank to my knees. The Empress Dowager spoke slowly. "Su Wang has requested you from the Emperor. Your appearance is considered exceptional within the palace, and it seems that fate allowed him to notice you that night. I have taken it upon myself to facilitate this union. Speaking of which, I had a dream not long ago. A celestial being foretold that the royal family may face calamity and urged that we must hasten to counter it with joy. Your family is unable to come to the capital in time, and your aunt, the concubine Yuan, is ill and cannot meet outsiders. Therefore, I shall recognize you as my god-granddaughter and grant you the status of a princess, sending you forth in a grand wedding 3 days hence. Little Lana, do you consent?" I deeply bowed, my forehead touching the cool gold bricks. "I am willing. Thank you, Empress Dowager, for your grace." 3 days later, I donned my wedding attire and sat in the Prime Minister's residence. Concealed within my voluminous sleeves was a dagger. My mother, hailing from a noble family, lived with clarity,
Peace and ease.
She personally handled the marriages of my second and third sisters, and her word held more weight for them than our father's. I once asked my mother, "What is the one thing in the world that remains unchanged?" She replied, "Change is the only constant." At that time, I grasped her words only partially. It wasn't until today that I truly understood their meaning. Just days ago, I had been racking my brain about returning to the identity of Xiaolonzeng, and now, sitting on the bridal bed, I clearly recognized that whether I was Xiaolonzeng or Baiji, my fate was irrevocably intertwined with Su Wang's. Should he encounter misfortune, the Admiral's residence would undoubtedly be implicated. If that were the case, it would be wiser to eliminate him before disaster struck. Though I had never taken a life and was as fragile as a flower, tonight was our wedding night, and he was outside drinking. It would be feasible to plunge the dagger into the neck of a drunken man while he slept. Once he perished, I would hold his hand and then take my own life. Su Wang's notorious reputation meant that once this marriage was settled, the palace would undoubtedly speculate whether I could endure the wedding night. In the end, when others arrived, they would find 2 corpses. They would merely assume I could not bear the torment and perished alongside him in a tragic embrace. Such a matrimonial tragedy would not implicate the Admiral's residence, and that would suffice. Though I did not wish to die, I found myself in a deadlock. When Su Wang staggered into the room, my hand was poised on the dagger. He was adorned in splendid bridal attire, reeking of alcohol, his eyes glazed and his fair complexion flushed. However, when he closed the door and turned around, his gaze instantaneously regained its clarity. He casually surveyed the room, then silently approached the window, letting his fingertips glide over the paper. Completing these actions with grace, he sat at the table, pouring himself a cup of tea while speaking to himself. "You have made 2 mistakes." I was taken aback. "What mistakes?" He sipped his tea, slowly massaging his temples. "Firstly, you should not have initiated contact. Secondly, you should not have accepted my handkerchief." I sought to discern his state and tentatively asked, "My lord, while I acknowledge that I acted rashly in initiating contact, what is wrong with accepting your handkerchief?" He slightly tilted his head, his gaze fixed on me. The flickering candlelight danced in his eyes, illuminating them in a manner distinctly different from previous encounters. "If I have been exposed, your hasty response would be akin to a fish caught on the hook. You should be grateful that it was I who discovered you." My heart sank. He was evidently not intoxicated. "However, you managed to pass the Empress Dowager's test, which surprised me, so I have decided to employ you. In 6 months, once your task is completed, I will expose your identity as an undercover agent, uncover your infiltration of the Admiral's residence, and use a beauty trap to draw closer to me, orchestrating the entire affair before arranging for your faked death and escape." My eyes widened in disbelief. "What is it?" He paused, tilting his head in the candlelight to scrutinize me. "A faked death in 6 months?" I could scarcely believe my ears. "Your abilities are still lacking. 6 months is the utmost limit. If you find this duration too brief. I hastily shook my head, my heart racing. No, I am merely concerned that if I fail, it will implicate you. Upon careful consideration, 6 months is indeed a suitable time frame. With that, I carefully retrieved the crucial letter I had secured against my chest and presented it to him. It turned out that even a deadlock could be unraveled. All I needed was 6 months. In that time, I could escape under the guise of Baiji. When the moment came, Su Wang would be hailed as the hero for exposing me, while Xie Lanzheng would be the innocent victim of a tragic fate, and the admiral's residence would be the aggrieved party. In less than 3 years, no, just 6 months, I would be free from this predicament, escaping the palace. There could be no more perfect resolution than this. Su Wang took the letter, glanced at it briefly, and casually ignited it with a candle flame. I was stunned. Aren't you going to read it? The letter is blank. Then why send it? The letter itself is useless. Only the seal serves a special purpose to determine whether the sender has tampered with it. I suddenly understood. This was a precautionary measure for undercover operatives. Remembering my prior intention to report to the Empress Dowager, I shuddered involuntarily. At that moment, I earnestly gazed at him and said, "My lord, what is my next task? Please command me." He took a sip of tea and replied softly, "Call for me." I was taken aback. "Call for you?" He rose and approached me, lowering his gaze. Suddenly, he reached for my collar.
Ah!
I gasped instinctively, staring at him in shock. "Yes, just like that, continue." His voice softened, tilting his head back slightly. Following his gaze, I noticed shadows moving outside the window. In an instant, I comprehended. Someone was eavesdropping. Our meeting is too coincidental, and others are uneasy. Though his voice was low, it was clear. "You must prove that I am indeed captivated by you." Suddenly, I comprehended the meaning behind his words. Call, my cheeks aflame. "Is it so?" I shook my head then nodded, my voice barely a whisper. "It is." As he turned, a fleeting smile graced his lips. About a cup of tea later, I lay beside him, voicing my inquiry in hushed tones. "Are you not leaving? Must you still call?" With his eyes closed, his voice remained steady and unruffled. "Call again." 1 month after our marriage, the entire capital buzzed with tales of the ruthless Prime Minister Su, who had finally succumbed to a life of gentleness. It seemed his days within the warm embrace of the Ink Army were somewhat more bearable. During this time, Su Wang frequently escorted me through the bustling streets of the city, adorned in luxurious attire, as we reveled in extravagant banquets and illuminated festivities outside the city walls. He stood by my side, lavishly spending, his eyes sparkling with mirth, resembling a drunken, newlywed sovereign. When I paid a visit to the Empress Dowager, she scrutinized me with narrowed eyes. "I never imagined Su Wang would be so captivated by you." To outsiders, we appeared as a couple deeply in love, harmonizing beautifully. Yet, only I knew the truth. In many such instances, while he seemed to accompany me, he was secretly engaging with others, embroiled in clandestine discussions. I remained oblivious to the specifics of his endeavors. He never divulged the particulars. Occasionally, I would catch snippets of conversation, mostly regarding military supplies, medicinal herbs, and strategic maps. At night, he continued to share the same bed with me. Initially, I was wary, but soon discovered that he not only refrained from crossing boundaries but also spoke very little. However, there was one matter that drew his unusual attention. The Empress Dowager, wishing to demonstrate her benevolence, invited the court ladies to the palace on the 1st and 15th of each month to personally sew winter garments for the soldiers at the borders. As the wife of the Prime Minister, I was no exception. Each time I returned from the palace, Su Wang would insist that I recount in detail every person I encountered and every event that transpired. Aside from that, he often sat alone at the table, silently sipping tea, cup after cup. In private, he was as quiet and cold as an unfathomable, icy abyss. Yet, in public, he transformed entirely, frequently wearing a smile, with a piercing gaze and ruthless demeanor that sent chills down one's spine. He was the dreaded smiling Prime Minister whom all feared. Gradually, I began to understand my role. I was merely a diversion. The Prime Minister's residence was rife with informants, making it inconvenient for him to act freely. Thus, he required me, the Prime Minister's wife, as a disguise, using my supposed indulgence in beauty as a pretext to traverse the capital. This task was simple, safe, and would soon come to an end. Since leaving Bien City, my once taut and anxious heart had finally begun to relax. One day, at the Jinbao studio, Suwang met someone on the second floor while I waited downstairs. Near the window hung a birdcage containing a thrush, remarkably similar to the one I kept outside my chamber. I felt a surge of affection and leaned closer, whistling a familiar tune. The thrush fluttered its wings and chirped in response, reminiscent of days gone by. Unable to contain my delight, I chuckled softly. Turning around, I found Suwang standing silently behind me. I hadn't noticed when he had descended. A few meters away, in a dim corner, stood two indistinct, silent men. I recognized them as assassins. Immediately, I composed my expression and inquired as usual, "Will you be returning to the residence, sir?" Suwang lowered his gaze and replied softly, "Yes." Not long after, the emperor summoned us to court. I felt a twinge of anxiety as I prepared to meet this legendary monarch who had risen to power in tumultuous times. My father had once mentioned that among the 7 princes of the late emperor, the current emperor had been the least conspicuous. While the crown prince led armies to victory against the Turks, earning acclaim, he had secluded himself in a Taoist temple, immersing in the teachings of Laozi, remaining aloof from the fierce competition for the throne. Unexpectedly, the illustrious crown prince succumbed to a trivial illness at the borders, leading to a brutal struggle among the remaining princes for the throne. Ultimately, it was the unambitious current emperor who ascended to the throne. When I encountered the emperor, soft snowflakes fell from the sky. He stood beneath a plum tree, clad in a light garment, attentively listening to Qing Jian speak. His features were gentle, his demeanor serene, as though the affairs of the world paled in comparison to the solitary plum blossom before him. Soon, Qing Jian bowed and took his leave. Suwang turned to me and said, "Please wait here. I shall speak with the emperor for a moment." I nodded. As Qing Jian passed by, he greeted me courteously. "Madam Su," he said, his previously cold demeanor softened by a hint of melancholy. Recently, he had been demoted 2 ranks due to his proposal for peace with the Ink army. I returned the gesture respectfully. He looked at me and quietly spoke. "If you could persuade Lord Su to reconsider, a war with the Ink army would bring suffering to the common people. I hope he can remain compassionate." I replied gently, "As a mere woman of the inner quarters, I dare not meddle in state affairs." He appeared embarrassed, acknowledging, "I have spoken out of turn. Please do not take offense." "Madam, your concern for the populace is commendable," I remarked. With a soft sigh, he departed. When the emperor summoned me, his words were gentle, devoid of any oppressive authority. After a few casual inquiries, he presented me with a pair of gold-threaded bracelets adorned with 8 treasures. As Suwang attempted to report on state affairs, the emperor waved his hand. "Let not such mundane matters disturb this serene atmosphere amidst the falling snow." As we took our leave, the emperor seemed to recall something and summoned an attendant to present a wooden box, saying warmly, "This batch of elixirs has been well prepared. They are beneficial for your health." Suwang accepted it with both hands, expressing his gratitude. On the carriage ride home, I could not help but comment, "I did not expect the Empress Dowager to be so formidable while the emperor remains so tranquil and detached." Leaning against the soft couch, Suwang closed his eyes in contemplation, and upon hearing my words, he offered a faint smile. "The Empress Dowager is the tempest upon the sea. The truly terrifying depths lie beneath the calm surface." Suddenly, the carriage came to a halt. Outside, someone reported, "The Ministry of War has intercepted a convoy of Ink soldiers. The path is blocked." Suwang instructed, "Summon the person in charge." Soon, a sycophantic voice echoed from outside. I was unaware that it was Lord Su's carriage that caused the obstruction. "I shall have them clear the way immediately." Impatiently, Suwang replied, "When did we capture Ink soldiers?" I was not informed. The man hurriedly explained, "Recently, an Ink army commander was captured alive in Xian City, under duress." He divulged much information, and these men are among those he named. To prevent a rescue of the prisoners, we did not report this in advance, but we plan to take them to the imperial prison for further interrogation. Suwang casually lifted the carriage curtain to observe.
Indeed.
Several prisoner carts were stationed in the street, each containing a person, as the surrounding onlookers displayed expressions of sympathy. I had often witnessed such scenes lately. The court's oppressive policies had led to countless corpses beyond the city, while the Ink army opened granaries to distribute food, winning the silent allegiance of the people. Suddenly, I froze. The person in the foremost cart resembled the commander who had escorted me into the capital months prior. Just as I was about to look more closely, a commotion erupted outside. Someone shouted, "There are rebels attacking the convoy." Another voice cried, "That cart contains Sue's traitor. Seize the opportunity to kill that scoundrel and avenge our brothers." The clamor intensified, suggesting a significant disturbance. Su Wang lowered the curtain, remaining unperturbed, signaling for me to follow as he stepped down from the carriage, leading us into a nearby alley. He walked in front with me in the middle, and the guards at the rear. I heard the sounds of clashing weapons behind us, and suddenly, my foot caught, causing me to stumble and fall heavily to the ground. Su Wang turned, swiftly pulling me up, but seeing that we could not proceed, he seamlessly blended into a cluster of cowering refugees. I had never witnessed such a scene before, and my body trembled. Su Wang glanced at me, his voice calm. "Do not panic, it will pass quickly." He abruptly halted, looking down at himself. A short blade had pierced his chest, blood gushing forth in an instant. Nearby, a trembling mother and child muttered, "Damn tyrant, may he die." My eyes widened in horror. Su Wang merely lifted his gaze to the pair before several armed ink soldiers rushed past. He swiftly grabbed me and dashed into a dilapidated dwelling. Leaning against the wall, he pressed his hand to his chest, blood seeping through his fingers. I stared at him in terror. "Are you all right?" He forced a smile, remarking weakly, "It's not a fatal wound." Despite his words, his voice was clearly frail. I trembled as I watched the doorway, praying that the ink soldiers searching for the prisoner convoy would not discover our hiding place. But the more one fears something, the more it manifests.
Bang!
A towering figure abruptly crashed through the door. Clutching a knife, he caught sight of the injured Su Wang, his eyes gleaming with a fierce intensity. I cowered in the corner, hidden from his gaze, yet I instantly recognized him as the general. His body bore wounds, evidently the result of previous brutal tortures, and now, perhaps driven by a fervent belief in eradicating the enemy, he had pursued his quarry to this very place. Guards outside hastily approached, but the general slammed the door shut behind him, bellowing, "Do not enter, or I will kill Su Wang immediately." The guards dared not act recklessly. Halting at the threshold, Su Wang's gaze remained fixed on him. "You cannot escape." The general sneered, "My life is inconsequential. As long as I can take you down with me, it will be worth it." The room was small, and it was evident that those outside could hear our conversation. The captain of the guard shouted, "If you dare harm Lord Su in the slightest, you will face the most excruciating punishment." The general, undeterred, gripped his knife and advanced towards Su Wang with unwavering determination. My heart raced anew, and a fleeting thought crossed my mind. If Su Wang were to fall by his blade, my current predicaments would dissolve in an instant. Yet, in the next moment, I gritted my teeth and tremulously spoke, "Su Wang is my husband. I stand beside him. If you kill him, you must also take my life." It was then that the general noticed me in the corner. His gaze fell upon my face, momentarily taken aback. I held his stare, unflinching. Suddenly, he appeared to grasp something, glancing between Su Wang and myself, his eyes betraying immense shock and realization. As footsteps approached from outside, the general turned back, his expression shifting several times before settling into a profound calm. He looked deeply at us, smiled silently, and suddenly raised his knife, lunging straight at Su Wang. Blood sprayed forth. The general fell to the ground, having taken his own life beside Su Wang. When the guards burst through the door, Su Wang sprang to his feet, seizing the knife from the general's hand, standing tall in the small room, proclaiming, "The traitor has been slain by my own hand." The general lay on the ground, eyes wide, his throat emitting faint, gurgling sounds. The leading guards rushed forward, stabbing him repeatedly to ensure his demise. I covered my mouth tightly, while Su Wang merely lowered his gaze, betraying no discernible emotion of sorrow or joy. After a long moment, he approached me gently, wrapping his arms around me. "My lady."
"You are frightened," he said softly.
I stood there in a daze, feeling an overwhelming wave of grief surge from within, enveloping me entirely. Suddenly unable to contain myself, I buried my face in his chest and wept openly. He seemed to stiffen momentarily before relaxing, his hand gently patting my back. "Do not be afraid," he reassured. I cried unabashedly, disregarding the months of pent-up fear, grievance, and exhaustion that now poured forth in that moment. I lost track of time until I finally stilled my sobs and noticed him gazing down at me. "Are you feeling better, my lady?" he inquired tenderly. I felt a twinge of shame for having broken down in front of others, responding softly, "Yes." A guard handed him a handkerchief, which he accepted nonchalantly. Wiping my tears while his shoulders suddenly sagged, a warm breath brushing past my ear. "Support me. We must not let anyone discover that I am injured." I looked up at him and saw that, despite his smile, he appeared pale and weak, beads of cold sweat dotting his forehead. I wrapped my arms around his waist. As we exited the small room in a tight embrace, we spotted Qing Jian standing among the crowd, his gaze fixed on Su Wang's chest, his expression complex. "My carriage is not far from yours outside the palace." During the chaos, I witnessed this prisoner exhibiting remarkable skill, taking on 10 foes at once. It is impressive that Lord Su, despite his injuries, managed to dispatch him with a single strike. Su Wang chuckled. "Lord Qing has misjudged. This is not my blood, but that of the rebel." With that, he wrapped his arm around my shoulders and strode steadily towards the carriage. The general's corpse was dismembered and fed to dogs before the eyes of all the citizens. The emperor declared that a traitor who dared to assassinate a high-ranking minister deserved a fate worse than death. Yet, such words evidently did not reach beyond the palace walls. In the hearts of the people, this brutal act was perceived as a revengeful warning from Chancellor Su to the Mo army, a declaration of war against them. In the following days, Su Wang claimed I needed care due to the shock and remained in our chambers to tend his wounds. At that moment, he sat half-naked, applying medicine to his injuries and wrapping them in white cloth. He truly did not require my assistance, managing his own care with ease, as if such tasks were second nature to him. Watching him, I suddenly asked, "Is it worth it?" He lifted his gaze. I continued, "Is it worth sacrificing a life for this?" I knew I should not pose such questions in his presence. Yet the image of the general's eyes in his final moments loomed in my mind, nearly unbearable. He regarded me with profound depth, and after a lengthy silence, he slowly responded, "Since I took charge of the prison, I have dared not to show any negligence, constantly contemplating and strategizing, always thinking that if I could save just one more, it would be worthwhile. Yet, to this day, I still bear the blood of 29 companions upon my hands. If you wish to know whether their sacrifice was worth it, the answer is undoubtedly yes, for each one willingly embraced death." I pressed further, "And what of you?" He furrowed his brow slightly, yet had not replied. Just then, a voice announced outside, stating that the emperor had summoned us to the palace immediately. Su Wang's expression turned serious. "The emperor is extremely suspicious. Once he learns of my injury, he will doubt the events of that day. We must tread carefully." Once inside the palace, we were led to the arena. The emperor sat high upon the platform, adorned in a simple white robe, his wide sleeves billowing gracefully in the wind, resembling an ethereal being. He watched with great interest as 2 men wrestled within the arena. Upon noticing Su Wang, he inquired amiably, "Su Qing, would you care to join the fray?" Su Wang replied with a smile, "I have that intention." My heart tightened. His chest wounds were not fully healed. Such close combat could lead to perilous consequences with the slightest misstep. Yet he swiftly shed his outer robe and strode confidently into the arena. My gaze remained fixated upon him, observing his steady steps and rapid strikes, each move imbued with aggression, showing no signs of hesitation or retreat. The emperor continued to speak leisurely, as if engaged in casual conversation. "Recently, the court captured a Mo army general who revealed that 6 years ago, the Mo army had initiated a covert plan targeting the palace. I was already aware of this. It is mere triviality. Initially, I intended to execute him, but he, fearing for his life, divulged something intriguing." "Lady Su, can you guess what it is?" the emperor suddenly asked me, his voice neither too loud nor too soft, just audible within the arena. I respectfully replied, "I am unaware, Your Majesty." The emperor chuckled. "That man disclosed that last year, they arranged for a female spy to infiltrate the palace in the guise of a maid, aiming to connect with their agents within the palace after taking the noble lady's place. You, Lady Su, are the one entering the palace this year alongside the daughter of Wu Taifu, correct?" I nodded, "Yes, Your Majesty." The emperor shook his head in exasperation. The Empress Dowager, in her impatience, had the entire Wu family executed. Even now, We cannot ascertain whether they were indeed slain. I immediately knelt, saying, Your Majesty, I beg you to see that I cannot speak for others, but I am certainly no spy for the Mo army. If you have doubts, you may have my aunt, Consort Yen, verify this with me. The emperor suddenly fell silent, resting his chin on his hand. Consort Yen, her condition is rather inconvenient. How about you play a tune to entertain those present? At once, a palace attendant brought forth a guzheng and set it before me. My fingers glided lightly over the strings, understanding the purpose behind this request. This was not merely for entertainment, but rather a means to establish my identity. Within the arena, Su Wang was fully engrossed in his contest. He could certainly hear the emperor and my exchange, yet he showed no signs of distraction, as if everything occurring outside held no relevance to him. After a brief moment of contemplation, I began to play, the clear notes flowing from my fingertips. My aunt, Consort Xia Yen, was well-versed in music. This piece was one she had personally composed and taught me note by note during our time in the capital. As the final note faded, I slowly withdrew my hands, only to find the emperor seemingly entranced. After a lengthy pause, he remarked, Your aunt, Yen Fei, was also fond of playing this tune when she first entered the palace. Back then, she was an exuberant and innocent soul, much like a carefree sparrow. As his words faded, a dull thud echoed through the arena, revealing Su Wang, having deftly thrown his opponent to the ground. He stood in the center, slightly breathless, beads of sweat glistening on his brow, and smiled at the emperor, saying, Your Majesty, I have triumphed once again. The emperor, regaining his composure, displayed a warm expression. Su Qing, your robust physique and extraordinary valor are indeed commendable. As the carriage returned to the estate, dusk had already settled. Throughout the journey, Su Wang remained silent. I presumed his wound was causing him discomfort and refrained from disturbing him, lost in thoughts of my aunt. Since entering the palace, I had not laid eyes on her, and an unsettling feeling lingered in my heart. Once in the chamber, I turned to close the door and inquired, How is your wound? A chilling voice responded from behind, Who are you? I slowly turned around. The room was unlit, only illuminated by the soft glow of moonlight. Su Wang stood there, his gaze heavy and penetrating. I closed my eyes, for this moment had finally arrived. Countless times in my dreams, I had faced such a standoff. Sometimes he would smile gently, praising my intellect. Other times, his eyes would turn icy, and he would sever my head with a swift stroke. He was an enigma, wielding immense power while treading the edge of a blade, his smile more terrifying than that of a demon. Though he belonged to the Mo army, his hands were stained with the blood of many comrades. In my life thus far, I had never encountered anyone like him. I had imagined various responses to such scenarios. Yet for some inexplicable reason, when the moment finally arrived, I felt an unanticipated sense of ease and tranquility. An icy blade pressed against my neck. Su Wang's voice was cold and somber as he spoke. I shall simply call you Xiaolongjing. I slowly lifted my gaze. Indeed, I am Xiaolongjing, the daughter of Admiral Xiefeng of Bianqing. In the dim, silent room, I began to recount my story, from the strange dreams of Baiji to the unexpected landslide, from the Empress Dowager's execution of Lady Wu to my clandestine meetings with him. I was once a compliant and cherished admiral's daughter. Yet fate has twisted my path to this moment. I know little of the grand affairs of the world. I only wish to survive and keep my family unscathed. I recounted the events of the past few months in one breath, with Su Wang remaining silent, not interrupting me. After a long while, he spoke, his voice grave. My identity is of utmost importance. Regardless of your circumstances, Miss Xia, now that you are aware of the secret, I cannot allow you to live. I closed my eyes, my voice trembling. I would willingly die, but my family knows nothing of this. I only ask that you spare them. Tears streamed down my cheeks. An outpouring of grief for my father, mother, and sisters, an unfilial daughter. One drop after another fell onto the blade, producing a faint sound. In the next moment, the pressure on my neck eased, and the blade was withdrawn. Su Wang's voice remained emotionless. You cannot die yet. The Emperor has already grown suspicious of you. To kill you now would be tantamount to admitting to a cover-up. I opened my eyes to gaze at him. He stood there, knife in hand, his complexion pale, and his demeanor austere. But you also cannot leave. In 3 days' time, You will accidentally fall into the pool and be unable to leave the estate. Miss Xie, please play your part well. I stood in stunned silence for a moment. I agree to perform this final act, but I have one request. Su Wang remained silent, standing there like an unfathomable abyss. I gritted my teeth. Allow me to see Yan Guifei. That is not permissible, he denied bluntly. In a sudden rush, I stepped forward, gripping his knife with both hands, pressing it against my neck, speaking each word with intent. Then I shall die. He fell silent, his brow furrowed as he regarded me. I held his gaze unwavering. In that tense moment, he suddenly lunged towards me, his heavy body crashing down onto my shoulder, then slowly sliding down my arm. After much effort, I finally managed to drag him onto the bed, collapsing to the floor in exhaustion, gasping for breath. At some point, I looked up to find him wide awake, staring at me with startling clarity, his face pale, yet his eyes bright. You could have killed me just now, he said weakly. Still catching my breath, I felt a surge of anger rise within me at the thought of our earlier confrontation. I have never killed anyone. After a pause, I added with a hint of sarcasm. But when I learn how, I shall come to try it on you. His eyelashes fluttered slightly, and for a moment, the corners of his lips seemed to want to curve into a smile, yet he was too exhausted to complete even that faint expression. 3 days later, Su Wang took me back into the palace. When you meet the emperor, express your longing for your family and request an audience with Yan Guifei. I was puzzled. Did you not say the emperor is already suspicious of us? Should we not be more cautious? Such a direct request might provoke him further. Su Wang's gaze was calm, imbued with a certain understanding of worldly matters. It is only natural to miss one's family after being in the capital for some time. The more straightforward and simple the request, the less it suggests concealment. In this instance, going against the grain may actually put the emperor at ease. Our audience with the emperor took place in the Wenhua pavilion. He was engrossed in his reading, the hall illuminated by various lamps of unique designs, some shaped like proud cranes, others resembling half-figured maidservants. The room was exquisite and bright. After I stated my request to see Yan Guifei, the emperor displayed no particular emotion, first glancing at Su Wang, who stood nearby. I have heard that Su Qing treats his wife exceptionally well. It seems the rumors are true, he remarked. Su Wang bowed and replied, My wife often mentions this matter to me and weeps daily. I truly do not know how to respond, hence my bold request for the emperor's guidance. The emperor chuckled. Is it not exceedingly simple? Yan Guifei is unwell and unfit to meet people. She will eventually arrange for you two to reunite. There is no need to rush. Upon returning home from the palace, I felt despondent. Just before bedtime, I could not help but address Su Wang, who was seated at the table sipping tea. I never expected not to see my aunt after all. Is there no other way? Su Wang set down his teacup and turned to me with a serious expression. You have already seen her. I furrowed my brow. What do you mean? Su Wang was silent for a moment, then his tone softened considerably. Yan Guifei is right there, beside the emperor. I laughed in disbelief. What are you talking about? Just now, aside from you, there were only 2 lamps beside the emperor, 1 crane lamp and 1 half-figured maidservant lamp. Where is she? My words halted abruptly, a chill rising from my feet, as if my blood had turned to ice. I gazed at Su Wang in terror. He spoke gravely. A year ago, Yan Guifei accidentally shattered the emperor's elixir and was immediately executed, her limb severed. She repeatedly begged for death. But the Empress Dowager found it ominous and ordered her eyes to be gouged out and her tongue cut out. The emperor deemed her a splendid human-shaped lamp figurine and has made her serve as a light in the Wenhua pavilion every day. I wanted to scream, but my throat felt constricted as if gripped by an unseen force, and I frantically clawed at my neck. Su Wang swiftly stepped forward, grasping my wrist. I struggled desperately until my vision darkened, and I fainted in his arms. In my dreams, I saw my aunt, Xie Yan. I was 6 years old then, before my father took us away from the capital, before she entered the palace. She had a pair of crescent-shaped, smiling eyes, her demeanor lively and spirited, her beauty and talent unmatched throughout the capital. She confided in me that she had long harbored feelings for someone. I asked who it was. On a day when snow fell heavily, she wrapped herself in a white fur coat, holding a gilded hand warmer, her legs swinging gently in the corridor, her bright eyes shimmering with youthful anticipation. I first met him at a palace banquet. He was then a solitary pine in the snow, tranquil and unassuming. Later, he became the most esteemed person in the world, she said softly. Yet I have always loved only him, though she married the one she cherished. And her letters arrived monthly without fail. How could it be that now she had become a voiceless, sightless, and unhearing lamp figurine? When I awoke, I found Su Wang sitting quietly by my bedside, gazing at me. I bit my lip, tears cascading uncontrollably down my cheeks. In the veil of night, he emitted a barely audible sigh and quietly began to speak. I was once an ordinary captain under the prince's command. After vanquishing the Turks, I returned home, as customary, to don the plow instead of armor. It was a beautiful and tranquil village where the people lived contentedly, leading simple yet fulfilling lives. However, after the prince passed away and the new emperor ascended the throne, one day, an army suddenly arrived, claiming they sought to extract the red earth of our village to concoct elixirs. When the villagers refused, they were mercilessly slaughtered. I returned from gathering herbs on the mountain to find charred corpses, elderly men of 80 and infants of 3, piled high in the village square. In truth, I am an orphan. The village chief found me as a child and brought me back to the village, where I was raised on the kindness of others, eating their food and wearing their clothes. Thus, I can say that I owe a debt of gratitude to each of the lifeless bodies that lay before me. Upon leaving the village, I discovered that in merely a few years since the new emperor's reign, the world had already turned upside down. I often witnessed soldiers committing atrocities, bodies of the famished littering the streets, and people resorting to cannibalism. It was then that I joined the Mo army, and subsequently I entered the palace. When you asked me if it was worth it, I could not say whether it was or not. This path is fraught with peril, with each step treading upon the blood of my comrades. Yet, there must be someone to hold the torch in the darkness. I simply do not wish for the land that we warriors fought valiantly to protect to turn into a hell on earth. I listened in silence, my gaze fixated. He produced a plain handkerchief and gently wiped away my tears, his tone both gentle and resolute. If your heart is now filled with righteous indignation, I must tell you that you have accomplished much in these past few months. Before your arrival, I could only act opportunistically. But with you here, in just 2 months, I have successfully transferred 800,000 taels of silver, as well as medicinal herbs and provisions. Without you, they would never have reached their intended destinations. I stared at him in astonishment, and he regarded me with compassion. Xia Lanzheng, your mission is complete. Tomorrow, I will arrange for your escape from the capital. Once you return, instruct your father to take your family away from Bian City. Your Xia family is already on the list of noble families that the emperor wishes to eradicate. Just as the entire Wu family was slaughtered under the pretense of treason, your fate is all but sealed. As for Consort Yen, I will do everything in my power to rescue her in gratitude for your contributions during these days. In a daze, I asked, and you? He smiled faintly. I will linger a while longer. After a moment of silence, I raised my eyes. Su Wang. I want to stay. Let me stay. He lowered his gaze, his eyes flickering for a long time. Do you understand what staying means? I do. Su Wang continued. He has one last mission. What mission? To find someone hidden within the inner palace. Where in the palace? The Jin Hall. The Jin Hall is located on the northern side of the inner palace, surrounded by unmarried princesses and concubines who remained loyal to the late emperor, thus forbidding any male, except for eunuchs, from entering. Even the emperor is not allowed. The person I seek is a young eunuch. There are only 2 clues. 1. He has a distinctive birthmark on his back, though I do not know its exact shape. The second is simply the 2 words, Jin Hall. Currently, I was in the Jin Hall, sewing winter garments for the soldiers alongside the noblewomen. This was my 4th visit to the Jin Hall this month. I had come to know that there were 17 eunuchs in total, all of similar age, having grown up in the palace. I was at a loss as to how to investigate. Surely, I could not ask the eunuchs to strip off their clothes for me to see. On my 5th visit to the Jin Hall, I steeled myself, and, while the eunuchs were trying on winter attire, I pretended to mistakenly enter. The eunuchs were thrown into chaos, staring at me in disbelief. Fortunately, one of the supervising eunuchs came to my aid. If anyone dares to leak a word of today's events, I will see to it that they suffer the consequences. With a cursory glance, I effectively eliminated a few suspects and smiled at the supervising eunuch. You are quite clever. I shall reward you. The supervising eunuch, obsequiously smiling, murmured, "Rest assured, my lady. Having received benefits from General Xie, I shall not take advantage of you." I realized then that he was the eunuch who had previously been bribed by my father. I recounted to Su Wang in detail everything I had witnessed in the Jean Hall, and based on my descriptions, he was able to eliminate a few more candidates, narrowing the search further. A flicker of excitement appeared on his face, seemingly more significant than the previous transfer of 800,000 taels. Curiously, I inquired, "Why is this eunuch so important?" Su Wang fell silent for a moment. "I have guarded the palace for 6 years, with hundreds of undercover agents from the Mo army sacrificing themselves for his sake." I was taken aback. Su Wang gazed at the uneven snow landscape in the courtyard, his voice distant. "In recent years, the Mo army has gradually gained strength, now capable of confronting the Imperial Army directly. However, the Mo army has yet to act. One reason is the lack of certainty of victory, and the other is that once war breaks out, it is the soldiers and the common folk who suffer. Do you know how many lives are lost in a single battle? Tens of thousands at best, hundreds of thousands at worst. To kill in order to stop killing only leads to the suffering of the people." I hesitated and asked, "So the person you are seeking can prevent this war?" Su Wang's profound gaze met mine. "I believe he can. The fallen soldiers of the Mo army believe in him as well. They are convinced that sacrificing themselves may save countless others, and thus they are willing to lay down their lives." I found it hard to believe.
Who exactly is he?
"He is referred to as Qian by my comrades. When the prince fell ill and died at the border, the 30,000 soldiers of the prince's army desired to support the prince's orphaned heir as the next emperor. Alas, he drowned, and the prince's army subsequently pledged allegiance to the current emperor. The Mo army's undercover agents discovered that the prince's orphan had not died but had been swapped by assassins, growing up in the inner palace disguised as a young eunuch. After many hardships, the Mo army finally made contact with him. But before they could extract him from the palace, the entire undercover network was dismantled during the emperor's purge. Since then, he has been like a kite with its string cut, lost in this vast inner palace. Over the past year, I have set up traps and left signals 6 times, but he has been too cautious to reveal himself."
How important is he?
Su Wang fixed his gaze on me. "With him, 30,000 former soldiers of the prince would turn against the current regime, which could mean the impending clash between the Mo army and the imperial court might be averted." I told myself that I must find Qian. I gave some more silver to the supervising eunuchs, and they became increasingly cooperative, understanding the boundaries and never prying too deeply. Yet, with the clues still vague, there was no further news regarding Qian. Anxiety burned within me like a raging fire. The longer this final mission dragged on, the more my Aunt Xie Yen would suffer. One day, as I stepped out of the Jean Hall, I unexpectedly encountered a familiar figure in the corridor, Qing Jian. I had not seen him since that day in the alley. Su Wang had mentioned that he seemed to have changed since then. He no longer contended with him in the court, and even acknowledged him with a nod during their chance encounters within the palace. Qing Jian stood by the window, smiling warmly and sincerely. I inclined my head in greeting, yet the first words out of his mouth were, "I know who Qian is." I suddenly looked up. "What did you say?" His gentle gaze met mine, his voice calm. "I should not have approached you, but given the urgency of the matter, I had no choice but to take the risk. My codename is Guyu. I am one of the first batch of undercover agents sent into the palace by the Mo army. After a previous batch was cut off, Qian and I were forced to sever all external contact. Now, Qian is in sudden danger and needs help. I have long suspected that Su Wang and you are connected to the Mo army, which is why I took the risk to seek your assistance." My heart raced. After a pause, I asked, "You are part of the Mo army?" Qing Jian nodded. "And you're as well, correct?" I remained silent. He exhaled deeply, his smile genuine. "Since you haven't denied it, it seems I was right."
"So, who is Qian?"
My voice tightened unconsciously. Qing Jian was about to respond when his gaze suddenly shifted past me. I turned to look. The emperor, clad in white, glided through the snow, surrounded by a throng of attendants. Behind him was a familiar crimson figure. The sunlight was blinding, and I could not discern Su Wang's expression. Qing Jian's voice rang in my ears. "Madam Su, do not be afraid. We are allies, and from now on I shall." I did not hear the latter part of his words, for I had already taken strides towards Su Wang. Before the emperor, I knelt, my voice resonant. Your Majesty, I wish to report Minister Qingjian. As I lifted my gaze, I finally discerned Su Wang's face, his penetrating eyes fixed upon me, gleaming with an astonishing brilliance. The Emperor inquired, "What do you accuse him of?" I proclaimed in a clear voice, "Qingjian has just confessed to me that he is a traitor. And he even tested whether I too was complicit. Your Majesty, I recall that day when you expressed concern over the presence of traitors in the palace. And thus I feigned to extract more information from him. He mentioned a person named Qian, who seems to hold great significance. I implore your Majesty to investigate this matter thoroughly." The Emperor then commanded, "Let them all come forth." I turned to see Qingjian standing there with a gloomy countenance, while from the door where I had spoken to him, a procession of individuals emerged. One among them respectfully reported, "Your Majesty, what Madame Su has stated is indeed true." The Emperor appeared to lose interest, waving his hand dismissively. "Take him to the Danfeng." He did not punish Qingjian but turned to Su Wang, saying, "Su Qing, your wife has performed admirably. Both of you shall be rewarded." Su Wang smiled in response. "Thank you for your generous grace, Your Majesty." On the carriage ride back home, Su Wang and I sat side by side. He stole glances at me, and I boldly met his gaze. "Speak your mind," I urged. He paused, a look of mild surprise crossing his face. "How did you know I had something to say?" I retorted, "With the way you turned your head so dramatically." Surely, it was not merely to admire my face. How peculiar of me! He chuckled softly, then turned serious. "Now that we know Qingjian is a double agent planted by the Emperor within the palace, anyone he suspects will employ phishing tactics to verify their loyalties. They may have heard the name Qian from the mouths of former members of the Mo army, yet do not know its significance. It is only today that I inferred this from the Emperor's cryptic words. However, how did you perceive Qingjian's phishing ploy in such a tense situation?" I shook my head. I did not see through it. When Qingjian spoke, I believed him, but later, I saw you. Su Wang tilted his head. "What do you mean?" I answered candidly. "Though I could not see your face, I noticed your gait. Though your steps were slow, I sensed an urgency emanating from you, as if you were eager to rush towards me immediately. I instinctively wondered why you wished to interrupt my conversation with Qingjian. The only reason could be to disrupt our dialogue. Thus, I gazed at him. It was not that I disbelieved Qingjian. Rather, I trusted you." Su Wang gazed silently at me, suddenly rendered speechless. Just as I was about to inquire why he had fallen silent, I glimpsed my own reflection in his eyes. In the fluidity of his lively gaze, an unprecedented brilliance shone forth. In that moment, I too forgot what I had intended to say. The following day, I again visited the Jean Hall, accompanied as usual by the steward eunuch. My spirits were somewhat dampened. After so many visits, I had yet to find an opportunity to investigate the few suspects I had narrowed down. After much contemplation, I resolved to focus my attention on the delicately handsome young eunuch who was always reluctant to disrobe in public. I instructed the steward eunuch, "Summon that young eunuch who resembles a woman." However, the steward did not respond, his gaze fixated on his shoes. I realized he was unusually taciturn today. Ordinarily, he was quite the chatterbox. I placed a hand on his shoulder. "Have you encountered some troubling matter? Speak of it, and perhaps I, as the Prime Minister's wife,
Can assist you."
He suddenly chuckled and, with a casual glance at me, remarked, "If I said I am Qian, would you suspect I am also a spy for the Emperor?" I was taken aback, my mind racing. The previous day's accusations had unfolded right at the Jean Hall's entrance. The eunuchs must have witnessed it, hence he was aware of the name Qian. I remained silent, but he continued. "A year ago, the Mo army severed all ties with me, and I knew something was amiss. I promptly cut off all connections regarding Qian and continued to lurk within this inner palace. I have seen the Mo army's signals in the Jean Hall on several occasions, yet I feigned ignorance. The Emperor excels at phishing tactics. Throughout the years, he has utilized this ruse to eliminate one adversary after another. Therefore, in the absence of absolute certainty, I would rather remain silent. I am not in a hurry. I have been waiting for over a decade, and I can afford to wait another 20 years. His tone and demeanor while speaking these words were markedly different from what I had previously witnessed. His eyes were steady, and his voice clear, as if he had transformed entirely. I glanced around, ensuring no one was present. We sat by a pond, the water shallow and devoid of hiding places. Then why did you choose to confide in me? I finally asked. He narrowed his eyes, gazing at the shimmering surface of the pond. The reasoning is simple. Those who have been baited by the Emperor can never be his hooks. I pressed on. How can you prove your identity? Suddenly, he reached out and extracted a hairpin from my hair, casually tossing it into the pond. My eyes widened in shock. He began to remove his shirt with swift movements. I observed his back, finding it devoid of markings. He turned to wink at me, then leaped into the water. Moments later, he emerged with my hairpin, smiling as he tossed it beside me before climbing back onto the shore. When the other young eunuchs arrived, he slowly turned, presenting his back to me as he dressed. The previously unmarked skin now bore a prominent crescent-shaped design, reddened by the cold. My heart raced at the sight. Yet, he resumed his obsequious demeanor, cursing the approaching eunuchs. What are you all doing? If I hadn't retrieved the madam's hairpin, Lord Su would have been furious, and you would all lose your heads. I was astonished by his rapid transformation. In the absence of anyone, Qian discreetly handed me a scroll. After the incident with Qing Jian, you might not fully trust me. This is the escape plan I previously discussed and revised multiple times with the MO army, containing detailed diagrams of palace routes, guard shifts, and personnel. Take it to Su Wang. It will serve to verify my identity and will undoubtedly be of use to him. I tucked it close to my chest. As I exited the Jin Hall, I spotted the Empress Dowager, unhesitatingly turning towards a nearby low building. The Empress Dowager occasionally visited the Jin Hall, always demanding that the various ladies-in-waiting don their winter attire for her to assess. With the scroll in my possession, I could not afford to take risks. I entered a room to hide and discovered it was an abandoned latrine, reeking and swarming with flies. As I stood to evade detection, I accidentally fell to the ground, becoming soiled. In my disorientation, I fervently prayed that no one would discover my hiding place. The Empress Dowager remained until dusk, finally departing in a grand procession. After a considerable wait, I cautiously made my way outside, only to find that a heavy snowfall had begun to fall, blanketing the eaves and pathways in thick white. My heart swelled with relief and joy. I could hardly contain my eagerness to share Qian's news and the map with Su Wang. He would undoubtedly be thrilled. As I stepped outside the inner palace, I saw Su Wang standing beneath an umbrella in the snow, his crimson robe and jade belt creating a striking tableau against the white landscape. The moment our eyes met, he strode toward me, and I could not help but rush to him. Upon reaching him, I excitedly recounted all that had transpired, including my 2-hour confinement in the latrine. But his gaze fell upon my attire, where the stains were evident. A wave of embarrassment washed over me, and I instinctively took a step back. He closed his eyes, then reopened them, a flicker of light crossing his features as he bestowed upon me a warm, gentle smile. Xie Longjing, you have done excellently.
With that,
he lightly draped his arm around my shoulder, shielding me with his umbrella as we walked side by side toward the palace gates through the swirling snow. Su Wang acted with caution. Despite his uncontainable excitement at the prospect of locating Qian, he meticulously confirmed various details both within and outside the palace, even taking the risk to meet him face to face. One day, he suddenly informed me, the retreat plan has been initiated. Retreat, I whispered in inquiry. He nodded with a smile. You will finally be able to see your family. And what about you? I inquired again. For the first time, a look of genuine relief crossed his face. I must leave as well. Qian is far too important to risk any mishap. I must personally escort him to join the army of Mo. In 5 days, we shall all depart, along with Consort Yen. Tears streamed down my face, an overwhelming torrent. I had always been a girl prone to tears. In the past, at the governor's residence, I wept for the melancholy of the seasons. Later, as by Ji, I cried out of fear and helplessness. Yet I was still Xie Longjing, still that weeping girl. It felt as though everything had changed. I remained myself. Yet I was no longer the person I was yesterday. My garments could be perfumed or soiled, but I had ceased to care about such trivialities. 2 days later, the Lantern Festival arrived once more. This time, both the Empress Dowager and the Emperor were present. Su Wang and I, as shining examples of success, naturally had to attend. During the palace banquet, I spotted Qing Jian. He was as ever the object of admiration for the noble ladies, each of them blushing and staring at him. Yet I no longer cast even a fleeting glance in his direction. Instead, I turned to Su Wang, who was intently fixated on a wooden tray beside the emperor, which held a pitcher of wine. When we approached the emperor to pay our respects, he ordered a palace servant to pour us 2 cups of wine from the pitcher as a reward. The Empress Dowager remarked with a smile, "Su Wang is exceptionally good to my adopted granddaughter. I truly wish to see just how far his kindness extends." As I drank, Su Wang cast me a glance filled with complexity. "Is it not permissible to drink?" I whispered when we returned to our seats. He shook his head. "It is of no consequence." That night, Su Wang presented me with the elixir the emperor had gifted him, gently saying, "This will greatly benefit your health." My head felt somewhat heavy, and I asked if it was an antidote for intoxication.
He nodded, indeed.
He then suggested that I sleep in the study. For these past few days, he had been alternating between the guest room and the study, often resting on the side couch in the guest room. So I thought little of it. In the dead of night, I awoke with an inexplicable sense of unease. I have always possessed such instincts. At certain moments in life, my mind and body would alert me. I made my way to the study. Upon pushing open the door, I found Su Wang curled up on the floor, trembling violently. His brows frosted, lips a pale blue, seemingly frozen. Panic surged through me as I gathered him in my arms, feeling as though I were holding a block of ice. He opened his eyes, attempting to smile at the sight of me. "It's nothing, I'll endure." I gritted my teeth. "Is it from that bowl of wine? You gave me the elixir, so you hid here to endure alone." What more was there to comprehend? The emperor was evidently using the elixir to control his ministers. Qing Jian was one, and Su Wang was another. Su Wang had given me that elixir, leaving him to suffer the bitter cold alone. His teeth chattered, yet he still forced a smile.
"Ah."
"I always seem to present myself in such a disheveled state before you." My heart ached deeply. How did you manage during such times before? I had witnessed the scars upon his body, old and new, a tapestry of wounds. Over these years, he had traversed this deep palace, appearing splendid yet beset by internal and external strife at every turn. Even those he toiled to protect harbored a desire to devour him whole. This scene of solitary suffering must have played out countless times in the past. His voice lowered. "One must always bear the burden alone." I clutched him tightly, trying to dispel the chill that enveloped him with my warmth, yet I found that no matter how hard I tried, I could not stop his bone-deep shivering. Tears fell from my eyes. "Su Wang, have I arrived too late?" His consciousness seemed to drift as he murmured softly, "No, you arrived just in time." On the day of our departure from the palace, after the emperor had dined, he went to visit his favored concubine. He never consumed food outside his own chambers and typically returned to the Wenhua pavilion by the hour of the pig. However, that day, assassins had drugged the favored concubine, leading her to behave unusually bold and proactive during the emperor's visit, causing him to linger for an additional half-hour. The current emperor was a man of extreme self-discipline. He rarely stayed even half an hour longer than usual. Meanwhile, at the very moment the emperor set off for the favored concubine's quarters, Su Wang and I arrived at the entrance of the Wenhua pavilion. Su Wang, under the guise of a royal command, ordered all guards and maidservants to withdraw, allowing us to enter the hall with audacity. The half-lit chamber was dimly illuminated by flickering candles. I fought back tears as I approached, finally catching a glimpse of her face. It bore a striking resemblance to my Aunt Xia Yan from years past. As I drew closer, I noticed her chest rising and falling slightly, yet her eyes were vacant, staring vacantly ahead, devoid of any expression. It was eerily silent, like a statue. I knelt beside her, speaking urgently, "Aunt, it's me, Lanzeng. I've come to take you away." She showed no response. Time was of the essence. I could not afford to linger. Following the plan, I attempted to move her into a specially designed box. Suddenly, she convulsed violently, her frail body crashing against the confines of the box. I turned away, unable to see her face, but from Su Wang's expression, I could discern shock. I hurried around to witness a terrifying sight. Xia Yan's vacant face was contorting, her mouth opening and closing in a grotesque manner, stretching wide and then rapidly rounding. She repeated this shape with increasing fervor and urgency. I was at a loss, and do not fear, it's Lanzeng. I'm here to take you away. Su Wang suddenly interjected, she's repeating 3 words. I stared in confusion. What words? Su Wang's voice was thick with emotion. She says, "Kill me." It seemed my aunt had heard Su Wang's voice. Her mouth widened even further, and her movements quickened, as if she were exerting every ounce of strength to convey this message. I gazed at her in terror and recognized it too. It was the shape of the words "kill me." When we reached the designated meeting point, my hands trembled uncontrollably. Just moments ago, I had plunged a dagger into my Aunt Xie Yan's neck. In her final moments, a flicker of dazed joy graced her face, as if in that fleeting instant, she had returned to the vibrant, youthful days of her past. Throughout it all, Su Wang held my hand, saying nothing, but his grip was firm and reassuring. All unspoken sentiments flowed through our warm clasp. At that moment, Qian had shed his eunuch attire, donning the robes of a royal physician. He merely nodded at Su Wang and stood behind him, carrying a medicine box, his posture respectful, resembling that of a young imperial physician. The emperor had long issued a strict decree that anyone entering or exiting the palace must have their numbers and identities meticulously verified. Each of the 3 palace gates was guarded by the emperor's personal soldiers, who would only heed his commands. As we approached the first gate, Qian was halted. Su Wang's gaze turned icy as he kicked the gatekeeper to the ground, coldly declaring, "I am here on the emperor's orders to escort the royal physician out of the palace. You dare to obstruct me when it concerns royal secrets?" The guard struggled to rise, weighing his options before reluctantly opening the city gate. The second gate followed suit. However, as we neared the third gate, we saw flickering flames from the city walls and chaos among the personnel. Su Wang seized a guard. "What is happening?" The guard reported urgently, "Tonight, there's a riot among the refugees outside the city, and the palace gates have been set ablaze. The highest alert has been issued. The gates are locked, and no one may enter or exit. Master Su must remain in the palace for the night." Qian behind us let out a chilling laugh. "If this is fate's will, we can merely wait a few more years." Su Wang lifted his gaze towards a corner of the city wall and, after a long pause, spoke in a deep voice. "Once the bow is drawn, there is no turning back. Even if we go against the heavens, we must pass through this gate tonight." He turned to me. "Lanzheng, undress." He had already devised a contingency plan, and we had all donned soldiers' attire in advance. Under the cover of night, we ascended to the eastern corner of the city wall. Here, the assassins had already incapacitated the soldiers, and a rope was set up for our descent on the outer side of the wall. This location was chosen for its seclusion, to guard against contingencies. Qian was the first to descend the rope. He accidentally fell during the last few meters, seemingly injuring his leg, but quickly regained his footing and waved at us. Su Wang carefully secured the rope around my waist and gently asked, "Are you afraid?" I shook my head, not afraid. A smile graced his lips as he patted my head. "Very well. I recently stumbled upon a scene outside the palace wall, where a resounding and steady voice echoed, 'Is there any anomaly at the corner tower?' Su Wang immediately responded, 'None. The palace urgently reports that Prime Minister Su Wang has rebelled. Maintain strict watch at your post, and do not stray an inch." "Understood." Su Wang took a step forward, standing resolutely at his post. An ominous premonition surged within me, akin to the countless times before. "Su Wang," I called softly. He stood with his back to me, his tone steady as ever. "No worries, Lanzheng. You should go ahead. I will remain here to buy you more time. When will you arrive?" "Meet me at the 10-mile ferry before noon tomorrow." "What if you do not come?" "Then continue onward. I shall catch up eventually." Epilogue. I did not wait for Su Wang at the 10-mile ferry. He had broken his promise. After sustaining an injury while retreating, I waited an extra day before crossing the river with him, ultimately reuniting with the Muojin that had come to our aid. I said to Qian, "For your sake, many have sacrificed their lives. You must not let them down." Qian looked at me, his expression grave. "One day, I will uncover each of their names and loved ones. They shall be eternally remembered." I prepared to return to the ferry to await Su Wang, but Qian rendered me unconscious. When I awoke, I was en route to the border where the Crown Prince's army was stationed. Qian apologized and handed me a letter, penned in Su Wang's vigorous and elegant handwriting, reflecting his character. "When you read this letter, I fear I may no longer be able to journey with you. However, you should have already set forth on your path. I have arranged for your parents. They are aware of everything and are en route to the place you will go." I was once mired in the depths of despair, wandering alone in darkness for years. Since your arrival, your frail form has repeatedly shielded me from peril, like a firefly illuminating a cold pond. You have allowed me to experience a fragment of warmth and sweetness in this world. That is sufficient. I sincerely wish for you, Xiaolonzheng, to have a life of smooth sailing and peace. I close my eyes as tears stream down my cheeks. 2 years later, I embarked on the journey back to the capitals alongside Qian, now titled Prince of Huai, with a formidable army of 500,000 iron cavalry behind us. During these 2 years, the Prince of Huai exhibited astonishing abilities and courage. The world would come to realize that the small affliction which claimed the life of the former crown prince and the gruesome struggle for succession among the princes were orchestrated by the current emperor, who at that time appeared to be untroubled by the world. The Prince of Huai rallied the scattered remnants of the former crown prince's faction and persuaded the highest commander of the Wuojin to unite them into a single force, known as the Huai Army, signifying gentle governance of the world, inheriting the legacy of the late crown prince. In the face of overwhelming power, wherever the Huai Army marched, the court's garrison surrendered in fear, achieving victory without a single battle. The peaceful era that Su Wang longed for was manifesting in this manner. As the grand army approached the city, news emerged from the palace. A rebellion erupted in the inner court. The emperor, meditating atop the towering Chengxian platform in prayer for divine protection, was set ablaze by disgruntled eunuchs, perishing in the flames, reduced to a charred husk. It is said that his screams echoed throughout the entire palace city. The Empress Dowager was subjected to a grotesque fate, mutilated and rendered a human pig, forced to witness the degradation of all those she had oppressed, surrounded by filth. The Prince of Huai, though limping, personally led his troops step by step into the imperial palace on the day the city fell. Upon entering, I had but one objective: to find Su Wang. Some claimed he had died, while others insisted he was alive. Yet, I placed my utmost faith in the Prince of Huai's analysis. He surmised that over the past 2 years, continuous intelligence had reached the border, providing numerous details about the former crown prince's loyalists, enabling him to swiftly assemble his army. He speculated that this informant must be Su Wang, for no one else possessed the capability to accomplish such feats. He had not perished. Perhaps he had assumed a new identity and was lying in wait within the palace, continuing to offer whatever support he could muster. I received a special decree from the Prince of Huai, granting me freedom to roam the palace, including every corner. Thus, I began to inquire with many individuals. Soldiers recalled the tumult of the refugee uprising, and one described a half-masked figure who had been disfigured by fire, resembling the former smiling prime minister. He had been assigned various roles, serving as a guard, a registrar, and a steward. I questioned each person, and all remembered this half-faced individual who was efficient in his duties and spoke little, yet none knew of his subsequent whereabouts. Even sought out Qingjian. He had become a prisoner, his eyesight lost to the toxicity of the elixirs. Both Su Wang and I long consumed these potions. I have gone blind, and he likely suffers similarly. In those years, he grew increasingly pale. The poison must be embedded in his skin. It is more probable that he has already perished. Before long, the Prince of Huai ascended the throne and conferred rewards. He asked me what I desired as a reward. Initially, I shook my head, but then recalled Su Wang and replied, "A peaceful and prosperous world." The Prince of Huai regarded me thoughtfully and said, "Granted." My father was honored with the hereditary title, and due to my contributions to his rise, I was awarded a special commendation. Yet, he chose to return to Bian City, asserting that life there suited him better. During our farewell, my father, mother, and 2 elder sisters wept as they had when I departed for the capital years ago. "Lanzheng, will you truly not return with us?" I gazed into the distance along the official road and gently shook my head. I must seek someone. He promised he would come find me, yet he has not. I need to ask him. Eventually, I learned from someone in the palace that on the day the Prince of Huai entered, the half-faced figure had exited, burdened with a bundle and carrying a birdcage. While everyone else moved inward, he had ventured outward. I believe Su Wang is not dead. I waited for him at the 10-mile ferry. I also waited for him at the desolate border. He never came. Now that the realm has stabilized, it is time to traverse the mountains and rivers to find the one who has kept me waiting for so long. I wish to ask him directly, Su Wang, does your promise still hold?
The end.
Thank you for listening. We shall meet again in the next tale.